So let's recall how our lives are dependent on other living beings. The food we eat, the clothes we wear, our shelter, our medicine, all come through the effort of other living beings. Whatever we know was taught to us by others. Whatever special creative ability or special skill we may have was encouraged by others. So we are not solid independent units, but we are very much existing in relationship to other living beings. They affect us and we affect them. And so seeing that, let's have the aspiration to be responsible from our side on how we affect others, and to make the influence we have a beneficial one for others and ourselves. And so the best way to do that is to have a heart of forgiveness, love, and compassion, and to have the intention to attain full awakening, to be able to benefit them in the most wise and effective way. So let's make that our motivation for sharing the day together. So in that kind of motivation, that's where we see the dependent arising as something that can help us understand both the wisdom side of the path and the method side of the path. In other words, cultivating love and compassion. So, the way to understand the wisdom side of the path we've been discussing, and we'll go into it a little bit more later this session, but also to generate the method side of the path that has to do with our motivation, then dependent arising is a very helpful tool for that, because we see that our whole lives are dependent on others. Yeah, and especially in the U.S., where we seem to intentionally cultivate this notion of ourselves as individual units who can pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps, with our individual identities, and we want to be unique and visible and special in our own individual way. Where all this kind of individuality and self-notion is emphasized, to see that basically we're nothing special. In that respect, we're special because we have the Buddha potential, but we're not special in the sense of, I've had thoughts that nobody else has ever thought before, and I taught myself how to speak. Yeah, I taught myself everything I know, and my artistic and athletic ability, and my musical ability, and all my creativity comes from me alone with no external influence. This kind of way that we often get of thinking about ourselves is really rather ego-inflated, isn't it? Yeah. If we look at, we all have special talents and abilities, that's for sure. We all have our own unique talents and abilities. But did these arise from us without any influence by anyone or anything else? No. Yeah. Whatever tendencies, towards specific talents we had, there were other people who taught us how to make use of those talents, who gave us the information we needed to know to make use of them, and then who encouraged us to use them. Yeah? And so to think, I am someone special who did something nobody else can, it is really stupidity. It's just self-centered rubbish, isn't it? Yeah? Well, maybe the person who invented these didn't listen too much to others. I'm joking. Yeah? So it's quite interesting, when we start to see ourselves getting rather arrogant to to realize that we're all tangled up. And yeah, and to realize that everything is really due to the influence and kindness of other people. No? Even, we feel like my body, this is really mine. This is really me. Actually, what is me or mine about this body? Yeah, really, what is me or mine about this body? If you look at it, it actually belongs, the genes and chromosomes belong to our parents, and everything that made it grow belonged to the farmers. So what is me or mine about this body? Yeah? We think, I exist independent. Others haven't been kind to me. I've done it all myself. Yeah? Our body was created by others. It grew and it was nurtured by others. Yeah. There's nothing in this thing that is me or mine. Yeah? If you open yourself up, and didn't Superman kind of have, who was it who went like this?
Clark.
Huh?
Just suit up like that.
Who?
Superman.
Yeah, Superman. Oh, okay, yeah, Superman. And you think if you go like that and open yourself up, it says, this is the property of whatever your name is. No, it's just blood and guts inside. Nothing particularly attractive, but we cling on to it with attachment anyway. It's another of our stupid agios. But, there's nothing mine about this body. No special reason to be enamored with our looks or attached to our looks. They don't belong to us anyway. And our knowledge came from people who taught us. All our abilities came from others. So we're very deeply interconnected with other living beings, to the extent where if we didn't receive the help of others, we couldn't stay alive. Yeah. Could you stay alive all by yourself? Just think, wherever you live, all of a sudden was in a place where there's no other sentient being around. Could you stay alive by yourself? We couldn't. Yeah. Or you might say, well, I bring a year's supply of food, but that all came from others. And the refrigerator and the freezer came from others. And the road to get to there came from others. Yeah. So, there's this incredible mutual dependency that is what makes society work. And when we see this kind of dependency, and how our happiness, and our lives depend on the kindness of others, then automatically this feeling of, I want to repay that kindness, comes in our heart. We want to do something in return because we realize, wow, my whole life others have been kind to me. Yeah. And then all that stuff that we've spent years thinking about, my parents did this, and then they did that, and then the teacher did this, and then I've been treated unfairly by that, and the government, and this one and that one, and I'm psychologically damaged. And we realize all of that is a bunch of BS. Really, when you deeply, deeply, deeply are aware of the kindness of others, we see that, a lot of the ways in which we get emotionally tangled up are, is stuff of our own making that we don't need to hang on to. Because in fact, we've received much more kindness than we have harm in our lives. And that's evidenced by the fact that we are alive. Yeah, the fact that we are alive indicates that we've received kindness, that we've received help. Because if we hadn't have received them, we wouldn't be here. Because there's no way we can survive on our own. Yeah? And so when we really focus strongly on that, then the ways in which we feel life has cheated us, or this and that, all these things we dwell on that we feel so heavy about, all of a sudden they become rather insignificant. Because the power of the kindness we've received overpowers any thought of, they've damaged me, or I'm damaged goods, or whatever it is. Yeah? Sure, we've all received harm. Sure, that exists. But hasn't the harm we've received been due to our own negative karma? If we hadn't had acted negatively in previous times or previous lives, then suffering experiences wouldn't have come to us now. So why blame others for experiences of pain that arose due to our own harmful actions? And then we say, but I didn't do any harmful actions. I was sweet and innocent and cute. Yeah? Well, if you say that as a child, then the question to think about is, do you know who you were in previous lives and the kind of actions you did then? Yeah? And if we say that as adults, then we have to ask, oh, so I've never myself stole from others or taken advantage of them, or lied or cheated or insulted people, or I've never done anything to other people? Check up. When we look at the 10 non-virtues, I don't know about you, but I've done all 10 of them. So why am I surprised when harm comes my way? I created the cause for it. Nothing to blame others about. If I don't like the resultant suffering. I have to clean up my own act. And belly aching does nothing to clean up my act. Yeah, but we love to belly ache. Oh. Yeah. But belly aching does nothing to help us. Zero. Yeah. Total waste of energy. And it actually makes us feel worse, and it makes us, when we bellyache, we make ourselves feel more disempowered. Yeah? Is that true in your own experience? When you feel sorry for yourself and you blame others, isn't that a way of disempowering yourself? Yeah? It's like, oh, poor me. I can't have a better situation until the world changes. Yeah? Good luck. Yeah? So instead of dwelling on our belly aches, if we look around and see the help we've received, it's really tremendous. Really tremendous. You know, sometime in the future you will all come and be in Chenrezig Hall. We'll have lunch together there. Okay? Some of you will stay overnight there. Yeah. But that building is arising due to the kindness of so many people. But when we have lunch there, are we thinking of the kindness of those people who we're dependent on? You know? Do we even know them? Do we know who built this building? To thank them? Because we have a meditation hall? So tomorrow, you're going to get to meet some of the people who are building your future dining room. Because I think that some of them will be coming and they'll make some noise. Yeah? But isn't that wonderful? Because they're building the building that we get to enjoy. Yeah? And we're just sitting here relaxing, listening to the Dharma, meditating, not doing anything physically strenuous. And they're going to be out there with, you know, the water pipe, right?
They might be blocking the road.
Yeah. They might, yes, we'll probably have to walk around by Gotami House and come this way. Yeah. But they're going to be connecting our water system to the building. Yeah, and then putting in gravel and putting in dirt and doing all sorts of different things. Yeah. So that we'll have a building to have lunch in. Yeah. And our ability to have that is come due to their kindness. Yeah. They put in a fire suppression system and an alarm system, and we're even going to have a platform lift in case, you know, somebody gets disabled, and, you know, it's going to be a super building, but it's all arising due to the kindness of other people. Yeah, and not only the kindness of the workers, but the kindness of the donors. Because, you know, that's not appearing magically. Yeah. And so the whole building is dependent on the kindness of hundreds, maybe over 1,000 people. Over 1,000 people? Yeah? Who have given various amounts to make that building a reality. So here, you know, over 1,000 people who have gone to work and worked really hard and then given their money so that we can have a place to have lunch in. Yeah. If that isn't kindness, what is? Okay? So, you know, when we really train our mind, then everywhere we look, we see kindness because of this dependency that we sentient beings share with each other. Yeah? His Holiness likes to talk about the bees and the ants and how well they cooperate, yeah, to build their beehive or their anthill. And there's an anthill when you walk up the road a little bit. There's an anthill. It's just starting to get active, yeah. And when you walk by it, sometimes you don't notice it, but then when you look at it, it's just teeming with all these little critters, and none of them are saying, excuse me, I'm working overtime, I want more money, or I worked yesterday, I'm exhausted, I want a day off. Yeah, but they're all working together. Yeah, because they see that for any of them to exist, all of them have to pitch in. Yeah? So the ants do this, the bees do this. Yeah, we human beings need to learn something about cooperation for mutual benefit. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because of this dependent nature, cooperation is really what makes sense. Yeah, fighting, competing to be better than somebody else, and then holding our nose up when we are, that doesn't help. Because if we want to live in a happy society, then we have to take care of everybody else who's in it. Because if other people aren't happy, they will let us know, and that will affect our own well-being. Whereas if we take care of others, then everybody benefits, and the society is more peaceful. Mm-hmm. So somehow, to enlarge this scope of thinking, so it's not just about me. It's about us, and us refers to all sentient beings. So then we have to care for the planet and the environment for all the sentient beings that are going to come after us. We can't just use stuff and then say, well, they'll figure out a way to deal with it. Yeah, but we have to be responsible.
And why do we seem to come together when there's a tornado, an earthquake, a hurricane, but then when times are good, unlike the ants, we part?
Yeah, it's quite amazing how that happens. I think because of this notion of I, yeah, and I want more, I want better, I want the best. So, when we're all equally suffering, we help each other. But when we're not, I can get a little bit more than somebody else. It'd be nice. One of my friends, who was a Tibetan refugee, who fled in 1959, he told me that when they first fled and they were all in Buxa, the British POW camp where they went to live, he said everybody was impoverished and everybody helped each other. But then as they got more settled in India, yeah, and kind of my monastery and my area from Tibet and my this and my that, then they weren't cooperating so much. And there was much more tension between the people. Isn't that interesting? When you're poor, you get along better. When you're rich, instead of relaxing, then there's more competition and tension, and I'm better, and I don't want to share with you. It's really rather pitiful. Yeah, the ants don't do that. Mm-hmm. So it's something to look out for, in our own minds when that happens. Okay. But thinking about dependency in the way of receiving others' kindness is very helpful for our mind. Okay. Now, I should say, the self-centered mind then says, but I've also been kind to them, and they depend on me. So pay up, fellas. You know, I've done something nice to you. You owe me something. Yeah. So, okay, it's true, we may have helped others, but what's the big deal about it? Yeah. And the ability we have to help others also came due to the kindness of the people who helped us. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I gave them money. They don't appreciate it. Well, who gave you the money to give to them? Yeah. We were all born broke. That would be a title of a good movie, isn't it? Born Broke. There's something enticing about that. Born broke. But we were all born broke. Yeah. And look at everything people gave us. Mm-hmm. And then the self-centered mind says, but I work hard and I earn my living. Yeah, but the money that people are paying you, where did that come from? Yeah? Didn't the people who are paying you have to get that money from somewhere? Didn't they have to work hard to get that money that they're now giving to you? Okay? So everywhere we look, there's just this incredible dependency. Hmm? So it's much more peaceful for our mind if we dwell on this kind of dependency and kindness, rather than keep an accounting book of what I've done for others and what they owe me. Yeah, because that kind of accounting book it makes us miserable, doesn't it? When we go around with this thought of, but I did so much for them, they owe me something. That thought in itself causes suffering. Yeah, whether they give us something or not, we're harming ourselves with that thought. Yeah. Okay, so we use dependent arising in that way to help us cultivate love and compassion and gratitude and all sorts of, really beneficial attitudes, benevolence, non-harmfulness, towards others. So very useful in that respect. And then we use dependent arising to help us penetrate and see the nature of reality and to free ourselves from this notion of a real concrete me. Yeah. Which, when we look, that conception of a concrete me really brings us a lot of difficulties and pain. Because as soon as there's this idea of me, then, of course, we have to give that me what it likes, and we have to protect it from harm, and we have to protect its honor and make sure other people appreciate it and don't disparage it. And we get into all this stuff to preserve this notion of me. Solid, concrete, center of the universe, me. And so that's where we see how afflictions come from ignorance and how harmful actions come from afflictions. Okay? So if we were able to just say me instead of me, or I instead of I, we would actually be a whole lot happier. Okay? So we exist, but there being some concrete, identifiable thing that is me, that doesn't exist. Okay? So we don't exist the way we appear to, but we do exist. Okay? Okay, so this section is called Dependent Arising and Realism. The theory of dependent arising can be applied everywhere. One benefit of applying this theory is that viewing a situation this way gives you a more holistic picture. Since whatever the situation is, good or bad, it depends on causes and conditions. An event is not under its own power, but depends on many present causes and conditions, as well as many past causes and conditions. Otherwise, it could not come into being. So every event, every experience we have, doesn't arise under its own power by itself, but depends on causes and conditions. So the cause is going to be the principal thing that made that situation. The conditions are the helpers, the other factors that help something come into existence. Okay, so in building like this building, we would say the logs are the cause, and the nails are the conditions, and the people who build it are the conditions. Okay, both causes and conditions are important, because if anything's missing, the result can't come into being. Okay, it's like baking a cake. If you leave out one ingredient, you aren't going to have the same cake, even if the ingredient is something small. Okay, so if you're making a cake and you don't put in the baking powder, yeah, it's going to be real different, even though it's maybe just a half teaspoonful of baking powder or something. Okay, so causes and conditions are both important. When you think from this viewpoint, you can see much more of the whole picture. And from this wider perspective, you can see the reality of the situation, its interdependence. Okay, so if we take any of the situations happening around the globe today, and see them as phenomena that arise due to causes and conditions and interdependent conditions, it really changes our view. We won't see things so simplistically, like all you have to do is just change that, and then that world problem is going to be solved. Yeah, but we really see multiple causes, multiple conditions, because you look at the situation in the Middle East, and a lot of that can be traced back to, the way the British and the French handled their political, what's the word? Yeah, political somethings that, political messes maybe. A lot of the problems is because of what the West did in the Middle East at the beginning of last century. Yeah. And then, those causes and conditions can be traced even further back. How was it that, Britain and France got into the business of colonialism to start with? And all the causes and conditions that brought that. And then what are the different views held by different people of different cultures, and how do those blend together and how do those clash? Because that had a role in it. And the weather has had a role in it. I was reading that the whole conflict in Syria one thing that has really stimulated a lot of it that we don't realize is that there's been a very severe drought for the last few years. So when there's been a very severe drought, maybe due to climate change, then the farmers have to move into the city because they can't grow their farms. Then you have high concentrations of people, many of whom are impoverished, and the society doesn't have enough schools for all these children who move in. Then you have a whole generation of young people who don't have a vision in life. So what gives you a vision and purpose in life? To have a cause beyond yourself. Yeah, and so people identify with their political group, their religious group, their ethnic group, and they fight, for the rights and welfare of my group. Yeah, and and you see how just the weather contributed to the whole sorrowful situation in Syria right now. Yeah. But we never even think of that, do we? We tend to blame, well, it must be because of their religious beliefs, or it must be because of this or that or the other thing. But there's many, many causes and conditions. Okay, when you think, with the help of this relational outlook, the action that you take will be realistic. In international politics, for example, without an outlook, a leader might see a problem as created by a single person, who then becomes an easy target. Yeah, we blame everything on Osama bin Laden. Yeah, but boy, he grew up, with certain influences in his life that shaped how he thought. And what I was saying yesterday about how a leader has power only because other people give them that power. So there were a lot of people who gave him power, and those people had qualms also. They had needs that weren't being met. Okay? So the situations are quite complicated. They aren't just simplistic. Yeah. Okay, so we blame it on a single person who then becomes an easy target. But that is not realistic. The problem is much wider. Violence produces a chain reaction. Without a broader perspective, even if the motivation is sincere, any attempt to handle the situation becomes unrealistic. The actions taken will not be well-founded because the lack of a holistic picture of understanding the web of causes and conditions involved. So it's true. We have to see the big picture, not just a few things and blame. Yeah. And that's really important when you're doing any kind of socially engaged work to benefit others, to really see the big picture and all the different players and different things going on in it. In the field of medicine also, it is not sufficient to concentrate just on one speciality. The whole body needs to be considered. In Tibetan medicine, the diagnostic approach is more holistic, taking into consideration interactive systems. Similarly, in economics, if you just go after profit, you end up with corruption. That's short and pithy, isn't it? If you just go after profit, you end up with corruption. Look at the increasing corruption in many countries. By considering all commercial actions to be morally neutral, we turn a blind eye to exploitation. Yeah. Isn't that interesting how we see commercial actions as ethically neutral? I'm just doing business, I'm just selling this and doing that. Yeah. without seeing the ethical component, without thinking of the long-term benefit or loss to a great number of people. Like you look at what Monsanto is doing right now. Yeah? And they're just thinking about profit. How can we make money? But they're creating a hell for everybody else, because soon we'll only be able to get Monsanto seeds, and they will control, the entire food source, because they're patenting all their seeds. Yeah, they do genetically altered things, patent them, and farmers can't even take, if you grow a crop with Monsanto seeds, you can't use the seeds produced by that crop for your next year's crop. You have to buy new seeds from Monsanto.
The Terminator seed.
Hmm?
The Terminator seed. They genetically altered the seed to kill itself after one season. So every seed that plant therefore produces is infertile.
Yeah. Okay. So this is not wise, is it, for a planet with a growing population? Yeah. But when people don't think of the future and how their actions affect others and are thinking only of personal gain, then the harm they do, without, Monsanto leaders are not thinking about the ethical dimension of their actions. Yeah. And so harm is going to come from it. Yeah. When, as they say in China, it doesn't make any difference whether a cat is black or white, the result is that a lot of black cats, morally bankrupt people, are creating a lot of problems. I don't think our Kitty Manjushri would protest that remark. But it is true that, morally bankrupt people do create a lot of problems. Yeah, we don't think of the effects of our actions on others. Failure to look at the whole picture means realism is lost. The attitude that money alone is sufficient leads to unforeseen consequences. Money is certainly necessary. For instance, if you thought that religious retreat and meditation alone was sufficient, you would not have anything to eat. Many factors have to be considered. With awareness of the fuller picture, your outlook becomes more reasonable and your actions become practical, and in this way favorable results can be achieved. The chief drawback of afflictive emotions is that they obscure reality. Yeah, and they prevent us from seeing, the big picture. As Nagarjuna says, when afflictive emotions and their actions cease, there is liberation. Afflictive emotions arise from false conceptions. False conceptions here are exaggerated modes of thought that do not accord with the facts. Okay? So we often talk of 4 distorted conceptions. And in the Thursday night class we're going through them, and they've come up in other contexts too. Seeing what is impermanent as permanent, seeing what is foul as pure and clean, seeing what is unsatisfactory by nature as pleasurable, and seeing what lacks a self as having a self. Okay, so those are 4 major misconceptions. Okay, exaggerated modes of thinking. Even if an object, an event, a person, or any other phenomena has a slightly favorable aspect, once the object is mistakenly seen as existing totally from its own side, true and real, mental projections exaggerate its goodness beyond what it actually is, resulting in attachment. Okay? So somebody who you looked at was just, oh, there they are. Then suddenly, well, not so suddenly, we have our, conceptual process coming in, just becomes so wonderful. We'll do anything for them. Okay, the same happens with anger and hatred. This time a negative factor is exaggerated, making the object seem to be 100% negative, the result being deep disturbance inside of our own mind. Recently, a psychotherapist told me that when we generate anger, 90% of the ugliness of the object of our anger is due to our own exaggeration. This is very much in conformity with the Buddhist idea of how afflictive emotions arise. His Holiness talks about this a lot. He was at some conference and somebody, said to him, some psychologist, that when you're angry, 90% of it is exaggeration. Yeah? But when we're angry, do we think 90% of this is exaggeration? No. We think I'm right and they're wrong. And what's worse, well, not maybe worse, but equally as bad, is when other people encourage this exaggerated view in us. Oh, you're right, that person really is terrible like this. And so encourages our anger and resentment and belligerence. Yeah. That person may have the name my best friend, but actually they aren't a good friend. Yeah, because somebody who encourages our anger isn't benefiting us. Mm-hmm. Somebody who says, you sound angry, what's happening in your mind? That person's helping us. They're putting it back on us. What's happening in your mind that you're creating this problem. But the person who says, oh, you're absolutely right, that guy is really an idiot. Yeah, that person's not really helping us. Yeah, they're just confirming our own exaggerated view. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting from this perspective, to think about who is a friend. Yeah, because we usually think friends are people who agree with my ideas. Yeah, and friends support me. Yeah, friends don't challenge me and say, you're angry, maybe your mind is afflicted. We're going to go, what do you mean maybe I'm angry? I'm not angry. That guy did this. My mind's not full of afflictions. He deserves what I'm going to give him. Okay? And so the person who's trying to help us, we make into an enemy. Yeah, very interesting to look in our life and see, yeah, kind of who's really a good friend and who's not a good friend. And how have we made people into enemies when people were actually trying to help us and were offering us very good advice? Yeah, but we didn't want to hear the advice. So we got mad.
Internationally too.
Mm.
Internationally too. I was like thinking back to when France refused to go along with the invasion of Iraq, and so all of a sudden, you're not with us, you're against us.
Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, when France didn't join in with the invasion of Iraq, and then all of a sudden, no, we're not so sure if NATO's going to hang together here. Yeah.
All of a sudden, we had to have freedom prize instead of French prize.
Yeah. Yeah. So we really have to check, who's a friend and who's an enemy, and to check, are we being good friends to other people? Yeah. Do we encourage the people we care about in virtue, or do we encourage them in non-virtue? Yeah. I know one family where the parents kind of had this way of, with their income tax hiding certain things. And so they taught it to the kids, And one of the kids wound up getting arrested for income tax evasion. Yeah. And then, so you have to think, well, the parent in their mind was saying, well, I'm going to help the child so that they'll have more money. Yeah, by cheating Uncle Sam. But it wound up harming the child. Yeah. So, at the point where anger and attachment are generated, reality is not seen. Rather, an unreal mental projection of extreme badness or extreme goodness is seen, evoking twisted, unrealistic actions. All of this can be avoided by seeing the fuller picture revealed by paying attention to the dependent arising of phenomena, the nexus of causes and conditions from which they arise and in which they exist. Looked at this way, the disadvantages of afflictive emotions are obvious. If you want to be able to perceive the actual situation, you have to quit voluntarily submitting to afflictive emotions. Yeah? It's another strong one, isn't it? If you want to be able to perceive the actual situation, you have to quit voluntarily submitting to afflictive emotions. In other words, attachment arises in our mind, and instead of going along with it, we say, wait a minute, that's not based on accurate perception. Yeah, irritation, belligerence, rebelliousness arise in our mind, and instead of going along with it, to say, oh, that's based on distortion. Yeah, but the word voluntarily, yeah, voluntarily. Now, when we aren't very aware of our actions, it's as if when we aren't very aware of our mental states, it's as if involuntarily we're following these afflictions. Yeah. But after you hear a little bit of Dharma, and you check up in your mind, just even a little bit, and you see that attachment and anger are troublemakers and that they aren't based on a realistic perspective, then whenever attachment or anger are arising, there's some point in there where you have some choice whether to follow it or not. Yeah? And sometimes we just go with it. Yeah. It's so habitual. Yeah. So we're so used to it, we think it's going to make us happy, that we just follow the attachment or follow the anger. Yeah. So His Holiness is saying we have to become, first, more aware, more diligent, vigilant. Something vigilant. So that we recognize these mental states when they're happening. And then, take that moment of choice and say, I'm not going to feed that. I'm not going to go along with that. Okay? And that's when we start having personal power. That's what gives us power, when we take that moment of choice. Okay? But we have to slow down and become more aware in order to see that. And then it's going to take a lot of falling down and making the same stupid mistake again and again until we finally say, well, let's try doing it a different way. I followed my anger. I followed my authority issues, for the last 45 years. Let's try doing it a different way and not following my authority issues. Yeah? And then you try a different way, and at first it feels really weird. Yeah. But then, when you start seeing the good effect on yourself and others, then it becomes much easier. If you want to be able to perceive the actual situation, you have to quit voluntarily submitting to afflictive emotions, because in each and every field, they obstruct perception of the facts. Viewed from the perspective of attachment or anger, for example, the facts are always obscured. Yeah. We pick out certain aspects of a situation and exaggerate their attractiveness or their negativity and ignore other whole aspects. Love and compassion also involve strong feelings that can even make you cry with empathy, but they are induced not by exaggeration, but by valid cognition of the plight of sentient beings and the appropriateness of being concerned for their well-being. Okay, so His Holiness is saying this, just in case we start to think, well, all emotions are disturbing emotions, so if I get rid of attachment and aversion, then I just become emotionally blah, and so I just have to get myself to not feel anything. That's wrong. Okay? So he's counteracting that way of thinking here. He's also counteracting the way of thinking where people can't separate love from attachment. Yeah. And think that if I give up attachment, I give up love. Yeah. So I don't have any emotional feelings towards anybody. I'm just stone-faced. Yeah. No, that's not it. That's not it. Okay, we separate love from attachment, and we encourage the love. Yeah. But love is quite different from attachment, because attachment's based on the exaggeration. Love is wanting somebody to have happiness in its causes without any exaggeration, without any strings attached. Okay. These feelings, these positive feelings, rely on insight into how beings suffer in the round of rebirth called cyclic existence. And the depth of these feelings is enhanced through insight into impermanence and emptiness, as will be discussed in chapters 22 and 23. Though it is possible for love and compassion to be influenced by afflictive emotions, true love and compassion are unbiased and devoid of exaggeration, because they are founded on valid cognition of your relationship to others. Okay? So when we meditate, and contemplate this, the dependency on others, and a feeling of affection arises, and gratitude, and love, wanting others to have happiness in its causes, there's nothing afflictive about that, because we're accurately seeing what our relationship with others is, and how much kindness we've received from them. The perspective of dependent arising is supremely helpful in making sure that you appreciate the wider picture. Okay. So maybe we'll pause here if there's any questions. Our dependently arising cook, who out of kindness is leaving to make our lunch. Yeah.
I do have a comment. In my own process of seeing how I choose to follow and not counteract the afflictions, is that the first time that I ever heard that a virtuous and a non-virtuous thought cannot coexist in my mind at the same time. That was really helpful, because I get into trouble sometimes, and then I want something to arise causelessly to like when I'm really angry and pissed off or sad, I really want the opposite of that at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But unless I make the choice, it's not going to rise out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've still got a little bit of this thinking that virtuous states of mind don't arise due to causes. And so, accepting the responsibility that I simply choose to follow these states of mind sometimes, and that I pay for it. You know, and that it took a lot of years to figure that out, because I was really sucked into being a victim of my own mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That I didn't have any control over the state of it, and that I wanted more than anything to have the peace and have the contentment, have the joy. But I was like, what to do, you know? So.
Yeah. Well, this is the situation when we don't know the Dharma, we don't know how to counteract these mental states. Yeah. And when we when our introspective awareness is not very strong, we don't notice them when they arise. Yeah. So it takes training to be able to see this and stop the pattern.
But to actually, at that point where you see yourself making the choice to follow the affliction and not to counteract it, is a very powerful turning point.
Yeah.
Painful still, but you can see that there's some power in that.
Yeah. 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 Have you been in situations like that where you can see you're faced with two things and you know you're making the wrong decision? Yeah. But you do it anyway because it's so habitual. Yeah.
I'll change tomorrow.
Yeah, I'll change tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We talked before about I think called the near neighbors of virtuous attributes.
Yeah.
Love, its near neighbor is attachment.
Mm-hmm.
Passion, its near neighbor is personal distress.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I've been kind of working with a lot lately is, with my parents, I would see their suffering and feel compassion and not want them to feel that way. But it was mixed in with this, I don't want to see them suffering. And then anger comes in.
Yeah.
I'm mad at them for suffering because I don't want to see them suffering. And any advice on how to see
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because people who work as chaplains in hospitals see this a lot, that often, family members are mad at the person who's dying, or they're mad at the person who's sick, and it could be for a variety of reasons, like, how dare you abandon me? How dare you desert me? Or how dare you make me uncomfortable by making me see your suffering because I hate seeing you suffer? Yeah, it could be for a number of reasons. But it is an emotion that happens sometime when intellectually we think, this is the time I should have the most compassion, but we're angry. Yeah? Yeah? So it happens. You're not the only one. Okay? I see some other heads nodding in the room. Yeah. So how to get around it? This kind of personal distress that doesn't like to see others suffer, is to use the situation to increase your own renunciation of samsara and your own compassion. So instead of they're suffering and I can't stand to see them suffer, get this away from me, to say this is the nature of samsara. This is my Lamrim teaching. Yeah, Lamrim teaching isn't just, coming to the Abbey and sitting in a comfortable room and hearing that samsara is a dead-end street. Teaching is seeing that with my eyes and from my own experience. And this is what's happening right now. I'm seeing that cyclic existence is totally dead-end. There's nothing in it to really go after in the long term. Yeah. And so then use that to feed your own determination to be free of cyclic existence, and your compassion for other people who have no idea of what cyclic existence is and are wanting to live it up and enjoy it, not seeing that at the end it's going to bring this kind of, situation of suffering that your parents are in. So you transform the situation and you use it to increase your Dharma understanding.
Does a bodhisattva get beyond the stress that comes up with it?
I think a bodhisattva does get beyond the personal distress, because a bodhisattva sees that the suffering of others arises due to causes and conditions. And those causes and conditions depend on ignorance, and ignorance can be eliminated. So there's hope.
They stay optimistic.
Yeah. So the bodhisattvas remain optimistic, at the same time knowing it's going to take a long time for the ignorance to be broken down and dismantled. But they remain optimistic. Yeah. Whereas the mind of personal distress just says there's nothing that can be done, I'm powerless. And then feels miserable. So I think, yes, bodhisattvas do get beyond that. And I think that's one of the things, when we talk about far-reaching fortitude, I think that's one of the qualities that we need to be able to develop in far-reaching fortitude, is to be able to endure these kinds of painful situations without just falling into despondency. Yeah.
When you were speaking about our responsible for the environment, for example, that we are totally dependent, so it's not only sentient beings but also the elements. And I was thinking about, how to find the right measurement to be kind of active and promoting, educate, if we know if we have more knowledge about, for example, the dependent arising, and can promote this knowledge to others. And otherwise we also have to develop our own mindfulness, as our awareness around these topics. So how to measure activity and our own development.
Oh, okay. This is a question that comes often. How do we put together our own inner development together with social engagement and practical application of the qualities we're developing in ourselves? His Holiness, when he speaks of to lay people, he usually says 50-50. Yeah, so try and make it 50-50. I think in today's world, when people have to work 40-hour weeks, it's maybe a little bit not. Well, you still have 50. It's just we sleep most of it. Yeah, but you try and do what you can and create a balance that feels good for you. I think as a monastic, you still face the same challenge. Kind of how much time and energy to devote to your own internal development, and then how much to devote to acting on, practically to benefit others. So there's going to be different times in your life where you do different things. At the beginning, it's much more important to really spend time on your own internal practice, because without that, any kind of external thing you're doing is going to be, influenced by all the afflictive mental states. Yeah. As you become more stable in your practice, you're able to do more external things without getting out of whack. But then the tendency sometimes is to go too much to that extreme, and then you find yourself, what you developed before, degenerating. So it's always this process of internal checking and in discussing together with, your spiritual mentor what you need to do at what time in your life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about our dependence on others, on our other beings, what struck me was one of our other dependencies is when you're talking about whatever talents we have. We also dependent on others accepting whatever talents we offer.
Mm-hmm.
You may think of yourself as a great musician, but if nobody wants to hear your music, you're not going to do anything.
Yeah, it's true.
And so tying in with what you were just saying, you may have really good ideas about how the environment, how people should deal with the environment. You may have really brilliant ideas on how we could change our behaviors to make more sense. But if you haven't developed your inner talent so that the way you express yourself is angry or pejorative or telling rather than compassionate, nobody's going to listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So you might have a lot of wisdom, but it can't be made full use of because of a lack of compassion. Yeah. And sometimes people have the wisdom and compassion, but other people are not yet ready to hear it. Yeah. They call that people being before their time. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Just wondering, I know that we have certain emotions and stuff for reasons like fear. Too much fear is not good, but at the same time it can save our lives in certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
With anger, is anger something that we want to push aside and try to get rid of altogether, or is there a particular time that anger might actually be appropriate or a healthy way to express that?
Yeah. Okay. In terms of like fear and anger, many of these emotions, I think they have there's a wisdom aspect and a defiled aspect. Okay? When you're merging on the highway, a little bit of fear is good. Yeah, it makes you be careful. Panic fear is not very helpful. Okay? Projecting potential harm onto other people is not very helpful. Yeah, when it's totally unfounded. Okay? Similarly with anger, well, maybe not so similarly with anger. Acting forcefully is sometimes called for and necessary in a situation, but we don't have to act forcefully under the influence of anger. We don't have to be angry in order to be quite straight on and no nonsense.
It might be better to look at it as, sometimes it might be appropriate to be stern. You don't need to be angry with the person, but be stern or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I always give the example of, if your kid's playing in the middle of the highway, you don't just go, "Oh, Johnny, sweetheart, that's not so safe."
Yeah.
You have to shake the kid and say, "Don't go in the middle of the highway, it's dangerous." Yeah. Because that's the way it's going to get across to them.
That's the exact thought I had. My little sister was playing up on the stairs and she was hanging on the handrail that was about to fall off. And I remember one point getting mad, and it wasn't because I was mad at her for something wrong, but it was more fear of her falling down the stairs and hurting herself or worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was going to say something kind of similar to that about anger and whether to just push it all away and not feel it at all, because I've tried doing that in the past, but I noticed with me it always builds up and then it comes out and it's really bad. So I guess I was just going to ask if, obviously that way doesn't work, but I'm trying to eliminate anger.
Right. Yeah, well, the idea in eliminating anger isn't to stuff it down. Because you're absolutely right. If you stuff it down at a certain point, you just explode. Yeah, so you're not wanting to stuff it. You're wanting to train your mind to look at the situation in a different way so that you find no reason to be angry. Okay, so that there's no anger to stuff. That's what we're trying to do. So if somebody insults me or offends me and I'm angry, Yeah, instead of just saying I shouldn't be angry, I shouldn't be angry, stuff, to the point where, don't say hello to me because I'm going to explode. If I say to myself, well, why is somebody being critical and insulting to me? It's because I've done that to others. This is simply a reflection of my own actions coming back. Yeah, there's this text, the wheel of sharp weapons, like a boomerang. You throw it out and it comes back. So this is the boomerang effect of my own insulting and offensive words to other people. There is no reason for me to be angry. I'm simply receiving the result of what I myself created. And when I see situations like that, when I really, really believe that, then I'm not angry at all. And there's no reason to, then there's nothing to stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay? But there's, many different antidotes to anger. Look at the book Working with Anger, and then, you kind of see in which situations, which antidotes work the best for you.